Hyunwoo Kim stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive structure before him. Nexus Prime was the biggest space station he had ever seen. Metal and glass stretched in every direction, with lights that sparkled like stars. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at the station every day. This was the heart of the Galactic Federation, and today would be his first day as Earth's new ambassador. He walked through the busy corridors with his small team. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past them. Some had 4 arms, others had skin that changed colors, and a few floated in the air without legs. Hyunwoo tried not to stare, but everything was so new and strange. "Ambassador Kim," said Sujin Park, walking beside him. She was his cultural attaché, which meant she helped him understand alien customs. "The council meeting starts in 1 hour. Are you ready?" Hyunwoo nodded. As ready as anyone can be for their first Galactic Federation meeting. They reached the security checkpoint outside the council chambers. Hyunwoo watched as other ambassadors lined up to pass through the scanners. The process looked complicated and took a long time for each delegate. A tall, blue-skinned Velkari ambassador stood in front of them. Security guards carefully removed sharp crystal-like spines from slots along the alien's arms and back. The crystals were beautiful, but looked deadly sharp. The guards placed each spine in a special container. Next was a Thuvan delegate, a creature that looked like a walking tree with glowing sap. Guards removed small devices from pouches in its bark-like skin. The devices hummed with energy and cast purple light on the walls. A Mortai ambassador shuffled forward on 6 legs. This alien looked like a giant ant with wet, slimy skin. Guards used special tools to drain fluid from sacs along the creature's neck. The liquid hissed and bubbled in the collection tubes. "Fascinating," whispered Do-Hyun Lee, the human xenobiologist who had joined them to observe the proceedings. "Each species has developed such different natural weapons." Hyunwoo watched the process with growing concern. Every alien was being searched and having things removed from their bodies. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed angry about it, but they all went through the same careful inspection. When it was their turn, Hyunwoo stepped forward and waited for the guards to begin their search. But instead of stopping him, the security chief simply waved him through. "Wait," Hyunwoo said, confused. "Don't you need to scan me?" The security chief was a massive Krugan, covered in thick armor-like skin. His name tag read, Velthar. He looked down at Hyunwoo with small dark eyes. "No weapons screening required for humans," Velthar said in a deep voice. "Council Regulation 847 Alpha." "But what about?" Hyunwoo started to ask. "Move along, Ambassador. Others are waiting." Hyunwoo looked back at his team. Sujin and Do-Hyun walked through the checkpoint just as easily. No guard stopped them. No one searched their bags or scanned their bodies. They simply walked into the council chambers while other species continued to wait in long lines. Inside the grand hall, hundreds of seats formed circles around a central speaking area. The ceiling was made of clear material that showed the stars outside. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their assigned sections, talking quietly among themselves. Hyunwoo noticed something odd as they found their seats. Other delegates seemed to avoid getting too close to the human section. When they walked past, aliens would step aside or move to different aisles. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. "Do you see that?" Sujin whispered. "See what?" Hyunwoo asked. "The way they look at us, and how they keep their distance." Do-Hyun was watching the other delegates carefully. "It's subtle, but you're right. There's definitely some kind of respect? Fear? I can't tell which." The council session began with routine business. Trade, agreements, resource sharing, and territorial disputes were discussed in calm voices. Hyunwoo started to relax. This seemed like normal diplomatic work. But then the Velkari ambassador stood up, crystals flashing angrily along his arms. "The Mortai have broken the Kepler Treaty," he announced. "They have invaded 3 neutral systems." The Mortai delegate rose on his 6 legs, fluid dripping from his neck sacs. "Lies. The Velkari planted illegal mining stations in our territory." Voices rose around the chamber. Other species began choosing sides. The Thuvan delegates glowed brighter with anger. A group of insect-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in an aggressive rhythm. Hyunwoo watched as tensions grew higher. He could see the Velkari ambassadors' crystal spines starting to extend from their sheaths. The Mortai delegate's neck. Sacks were swelling with bioacid. Even without their weapons, these aliens looked dangerous. "Should we do something?" Sujin asked quietly. Before Hyunwoo could answer, he noticed that every eye in the chamber had turned toward the human delegation. Hundreds of aliens were watching them, waiting to see what they would do. Hyunwoo wasn't sure why, but he felt like this moment was important. He stood up slowly, placing both hands flat on the table in front of him. He didn't raise his voice or make any aggressive movements. He simply stood there. The effect was immediate. The Velkari ambassadors' spines retracted. The Mortai delegates' sacks began to shrink. The angry voices around the chamber faded to whispers, then to complete silence. "Perhaps," Hyunwoo said in a calm voice, "we should review the evidence before making accusations." The room stayed quiet. Even the most aggressive delegates nodded in agreement. "An excellent suggestion," said the council chairman, a elderly Thuvan whose bark had turned silver with age. "We will adjourn for 1 hour to examine all documents." As the session broke up, aliens filed out of the chamber in orderly groups. No one pushed or argued. They gave the human delegation plenty of space as they passed. "What just happened?" Do-hyun asked as they gathered their things. "I have no idea," Hyunwoo replied, but he was starting to think there was much more to humanity's place in the Federation than anyone had told him. Walking back through the corridors, Sujin noticed the respectful distance other species maintained around them. "There's definitely something we don't know," she said. "Something about why humans are treated differently here." Hyunwoo nodded. The weapon screening, the deference shown to them, the way his simple gesture had calmed an entire chamber full of angry aliens, none of it made sense, but he was determined to find out why. The next morning, Hyunwoo met with Do-hyun Lee in the station's research library. The xenobiologist had spent the night thinking about what they had witnessed in the council chamber. "I've been studying alien behavior for 10 years, Do-hyun said, pulling up files on his tablet. "But I've never seen anything like yesterday. The way they all stopped fighting when you stood up. That wasn't normal diplomatic respect." Hyunwoo sat down at a computer terminal. "Let's start with the regulation Velthar mentioned, Council Regulation 847 Alpha." They searched the public database, but the regulation was listed as classified. Only high-level Federation officials could access the full text. All they could see was a brief summary. Special security protocols for Terran delegates. "That doesn't help much," Sujin said, joining them with a cup of coffee. She had been talking to other human staff members on the station. "But I learned something interesting. Humans have been exempt from weapons screening for over 200 years, since we first joined the Federation." Do-hyun frowned. "That's strange. Most species only get special treatment after proving themselves in war or showing some kind of superior technology. But humans were given this exemption right from the start. They spent hours searching through public records, but everything useful was classified or missing. It was like someone had deliberately hidden the information about humanity's early days in the Federation." "We need to talk to someone who was there," Hyunwoo said. "Someone who knows the real history." Sujin suggested they contact Admiral Taemin Choi, a human fleet commander stationed in the outer systems. He had been in the Federation military for 40 years and might know something about the old regulations. When they called him, Admiral, Choi appeared on the screen as a serious man with gray hair and tired eyes. He listened to their questions without changing his expression. "Ambassador Kim," he said slowly, "some knowledge is dangerous. The Federation's peace depends on certain understandings remaining unspoken. But we have a right to know." Hyunwoo insisted. "How can we represent humanity if we don't understand our own status in the Federation?" Admiral Choi was quiet for a long moment. "Be careful what you wish to learn. Some doors once opened cannot be closed again." The call ended, leaving them with more questions than answers. That afternoon, Jinny Song, a human communications officer, contacted them with disturbing news. She worked in the station's message center and had access to encrypted communications between different alien governments. "I shouldn't be sharing this," she said nervously, "but I've been seeing strange messages lately. They're all about humans." She showed them translated excerpts on her tablet. The messages were coded, but the translations were clear enough. The Keu, Deathworlders grow curious about their reputation. Perhaps it's time they learned why we fear them. No, that knowledge could destabilize everything. Keep them ignorant. It's safer for all of us. Do-hyun stared at the messages. Deathworlders? Is that what they call us? It gets worse, Janae said. These messages aren't just between a few governments. They're coming from dozens of different species. It's like they're all coordinating to keep some secret about humanity. That evening they met with Dr. Yoon-ji Yang, the station's head psychiatrist. She was a kind woman who had worked with alien psychology for 15 years. Her office was filled with plants from different worlds and soft lighting that was supposed to be calming. "I'm glad you came to me," Dr. Yang said when they explained their investigation. "I've been treating a condition that I call baseline anxiety. It only affects aliens who spend extended time around humans." She pulled up medical files on her computer. The symptoms include hypervigilance, stress-induced molting in species that shed skin, difficulty sleeping, and in severe cases, complete social paralysis. "What causes it?" Soo-jin asked. "That's what puzzles me. The patients can't explain why they feel afraid. They describe humans as wrong or dangerous, but can't say why. It's like some kind of instinctive fear response." Dr. Yang showed them brain scans of different alien species. "Look at these patterns. When exposed to humans for more than a few hours, their stress hormones spike. Their brains show activity in regions associated with predator detection." "Predator detection?" Hyun-woo repeated. "It's a survival mechanism. All prey species have brain circuits that help them identify potential threats. But here's the strange part. Even predator species show this response to humans. Species that are apex predators on their own worlds still register humans as dangerous." They left Dr. Yang's office with more questions than ever. If aliens instinctively saw humans as predators, why were humans allowed to walk around without weapons? Why weren't they restricted or monitored more carefully? The next day, Do-hyun made a breakthrough. While searching through old scientific databases, he found references to something called the Terran integration crisis. The papers were mostly classified, but he found fragments in academic journals. "Listen to this," he said, reading from his tablet. "From the Journal of Xenobiology, Volume 847, the unique evolutionary background of the Terran species presents unprecedented challenges for Federation integration protocols." Another fragment read, "Standard security measures prove inadequate when applied to persistence predator species." "Persistence predator?" Soo-jin asked. "It's a hunting strategy," Do-hyun explained. "Instead of being fast or strong, persistence predators wear down their prey over long periods. They never give up. They just keep following until their target collapses from exhaustion." Hyun-woo felt a chill. "Are you saying that's how humans hunt?" "Think about it," Do-hyun said. "Humans are the only species that can run long distances. We sweat to cool down while other animals overheat. Our ancestors could follow prey animals for days until they collapsed. More pieces were starting to fit together. Humans weren't the biggest or strongest species in the Federation. They weren't the most technologically advanced, but they might be the only species that had evolved as pursuit predators on what the aliens called a death world." That night, Janae brought them more intercepted messages. These were more urgent than the previous ones. The human ambassador is asking questions. We should have prepared better cover stories. What if they discover the conditioning? The conditioning? Hyun-woo read aloud. What conditioning? They were getting close to something important. The aliens were clearly afraid of humans learning some truth about their own nature. But what could be so dangerous that an entire galactic community would work together to hide it? As they prepared to dig deeper, a message arrived from Admiral Choi. It was brief. "Stop investigating. You're putting everyone at risk." But Hyun-woo was determined to continue. Whatever secret the Federation was keeping about humanity, he was going to find out what it was. The safety and future of his species might depend on it. The investigation was just beginning. Do-hyun had been working for 3 days straight, barely sleeping or eating. His eyes were red from staring at computer screens, but he had finally found what they were looking for. "I got into the classified archives," he announced when the team gathered in a secure conference room. "It took some creative hacking, but I found the original files about humanity's integration into the Federation." Hyun-woo leaned forward. "What did you find?" "The weapon screening exemption dates back exactly 203 years, Do-hyun said, pulling up holographic displays. "It was created after something called the Terran Integration Crisis. But it wasn't originally meant to be an exemption. It was meant to be the opposite." The documents Do-hyun had found painted a very different picture of humanity's early days in the Federation. When first contact was made, humans were treated like any other new species. They followed all protocols, submitted to all regulations, and tried their best to fit into galactic society. "Look at this report," Do-hyun continued, highlighting a section of text. "From Federation Security Chief Morkal, the Terrans appear to be a peaceful species with limited natural weapons. Standard integration protocols should be sufficient." But something had gone wrong. The files showed a series of incidents that changed everything. "The first incident happened during a trade negotiation," Soo-jin read from another document. "A human diplomat named So-ra-yoon was involved in a dispute with a Krugan trade representative. The report described how the Krugan delegate had become angry during negotiations and had physically threatened So-ra. The Krugan was twice her size, covered in armor-like skin, and had natural bone spurs that could punch through metal. So-ra's response was unexpected," Do-hyun said, reading from the security report. "She picked up a simple writing stylus from the table. Then she calmly demonstrated 17 different ways it could be used to kill the Krugan delegate." Hyun-woo stared at the screen. 17 ways with a writing tool? According to the report, she showed how to pierce nerve clusters, cut major blood vessels, and block breathing passages. Several of the methods would cause death hours or days later, making them almost impossible to detect. The Federation security team had been shocked. They had watched a small, apparently harmless human turn an everyday object into a deadly weapon with nothing but knowledge and creativity. "But that was just the beginning," Do-hyun continued, scrolling through more files. "After that incident, the Federation started studying humans more carefully. What they found terrified them." Dr. Won-shik Bae had been Earth's chief evolutionary biologist during first contact. His reports to the Federation Science Council were now classified at the highest levels, but Do-hyun had managed to piece together fragments. "Humans evolved on a Class 12 death world," Do-hyun read. "They survived ice ages, plagues, predator species, and constant warfare. Their brains developed to see potential weapons in every environment." The reports described how human minds worked differently from other species. While most aliens could use tools, humans instinctively saw weapons and tactical advantages everywhere they looked. "Listen to this psychological profile," Soo-jin said, finding another document. "Subject unconsciously assessed 17 escape routes within 30 seconds of entering the room. Identified 6 potential weapons within arm's reach. Automatically positioned himself with back to wall and clear view of all entrances. That's just normal human behavior," Hyun-woo said. "Exactly," Do-hyun replied. "But no other species does this. Most aliens don't even understand the concept of tactical positioning. Their brains don't work that way." The crisis had deepened when more incidents occurred. A human security officer named Commander Yoo-jin Nam had been forced to defend herself during a terrorist attack on a Federation station. The security footage from that incident was still classified, but the reports described what happened. 7 heavily armed Mortai terrorists had attacked the station's command center. Commander Nam was the only security officer present, and she was completely unarmed. She neutralized all 7 attackers using improvised weapons, Do-hyun read from the incident report. Furniture legs became clubs and spears. Decorative plants were used to block vision and create chemical irritants. She even used pieces of her torn uniform as binding materials and strangling cords. The Federation security analysts who reviewed the footage had been horrified. They watched a single human move through a combat situation with an efficiency that seemed impossible. She didn't fight like other species, she fought like something that had evolved to hunt and kill. The report says she moved like a liquid predator, Sujin read. Every action served multiple purposes. Every movement positioned her for the next attack while defending against current threats. More files revealed the scope of what the Federation had discovered. Humans weren't just good at improvised weapons, they were walking tactical computers. Their brains constantly processed threat assessments, escape routes, and combat scenarios without them even realizing it. Look at this comparative study, Do-hyun said, showing them a chart. When presented with a simple room, humans identify an average of 43 potential weapons. Velkari identify 4, Thuvans identify 1, Mortai identify 0. The Federation had faced a terrible choice. Humans had applied to join the galactic community, but they were unlike any species ever encountered. They were apex predators who could turn any environment into a battlefield. Some Federation members wanted to reject humanity's application entirely. Do-hyun continued reading. Counselor Jae Sung-oh argued that humans were too dangerous to integrate into civilized society. But humanity had an advocate. Ambassador Haiwan Choi, Taemin's grandmother, had made a counter-proposal that saved humanity's membership in the Federation. She proposed something called voluntary conditioning, Sujin said, finding the relevant files. Humans would undergo psychological treatment to suppress their predatory instincts in exchange for Federation membership. The conditioning program had been developed by Dr. Myung-soo Kim, working with Federation psychologists. It was designed to make humans less threatening to other species by suppressing their natural tactical awareness. The program taught humans to ignore potential weapons, Do-hyun explained, to avoid tactical positioning, to suppress threat assessments, basically to turn off the parts of their brains that made other species afraid. Hyun-woo felt sick as he read the details. Generations of humans had undergone this conditioning, learning to be less than what they naturally were, all to make aliens comfortable around them. The weapon screening exemption was the result, Do-hyun concluded. Since humans could weaponize anything, there was no point in taking away specific items. Instead, they conditioned humans to not think like weapons. But there was one more file that changed everything. A recent medical report from Dr. Yoon-ji Yang showed that the conditioning was breaking down. Younger humans, especially those born on Federation worlds, are starting to naturally redevelop their species' original instincts, the report stated. The suppression was never permanent. It was just a temporary solution that is now failing. Hyun-woo sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by what they had learned. Humanity had given up its natural abilities to join the Federation. But now those abilities were coming back, whether they wanted them to or not. The question was, what would the Federation do when they realized that humanity was remembering how to be human again? Armed with the truth about the conditioning program, Hyun-woo demanded a meeting with Admiral Taemin Choi. This time, the Admiral agreed to meet in person. He arrived at Nexus Prime on an unmarked military transport, looking older and more tired than he had on the video call. They met in a secure conference room deep within the station's military section. Admiral Choi sat across from Hyun-woo, studying him carefully before speaking. "You found the classified files," the Admiral said. "It wasn't a question. We found enough," Hyun-woo replied. "The conditioning, the weapon screening exemption, the real reason aliens fear us. But I think there's more you haven't told us." Admiral Choi nodded slowly. "There is. Things that weren't written down in any file." He paused, seeming to wrestle with a difficult decision. "I suppose it's time you knew the complete truth." The Admiral activated a privacy shield around their table, ensuring no one could listen to their conversation. Then he began to tell them things that weren't in any official record. "My grandmother, Ambassador Haiwan Choi, didn't just negotiate the conditioning program," he began. "She helped create something else, a backup plan, a way to preserve humanity's original nature in case it was ever needed again." He explained that a small group of humans had been selected to remain unconditioned. They were spread throughout the Federation military and government, maintaining their natural abilities while pretending to be like other conditioned humans. "We call ourselves the Keepers," Admiral Choi said. "We remember what humanity was before, the conditioning. We train in secret, keeping our instincts sharp, and we watch." "Watch for what?" Sujin asked. "For threats that the conditioned humans couldn't handle. For situations where humanity might need its original nature to survive." The Admiral told them about the extensive training programs the Keepers maintained. They practiced combat techniques that had been banned for 2 centuries. They studied tactical analysis that ordinary humans had been conditioned to ignore. They prepared for a war that everyone hoped would never come. "How many of you are there?" Do-hyun asked. "Enough," the Admiral replied. "We're scattered throughout human space and beyond. Military officers, diplomats, scientists, even some civilians. All pretending to be conditioned while maintaining our true nature." But the Admiral revealed something even more disturbing. The conditioning program hadn't just suppressed human abilities, it had hidden the full extent of what humans were capable of. "The files you found only told part of the story," he said. "The Federation never learned everything about human potential. We made sure of that. During the original integration crisis, humans had deliberately held back. They showed the Federation enough of their abilities to be considered dangerous, but not enough to be considered an existential threat." "Commander Yoo-jin Nam's defense of the command center?" Admiral Choi smiled grimly. She was holding back. A lot. He showed them classified footage that had never been seen by Federation officials. The same terrorist attack, but from different camera angles. What the footage revealed made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. Yoo-jin hadn't just neutralized 7 attackers. She had done it while simultaneously protecting civilian workers, maintaining communication with other security teams, and setting traps for additional terrorists who never arrived. Her actions had been far more complex and efficient than the Federation realized. She could have ended the fight in under a minute if she had wanted to, the Admiral explained. But that would have revealed too much. So she made it look difficult, made it look like she was struggling. She gave the Federation the impression that humans were dangerous but manageable. The truth was far more frightening. Unconditioned humans weren't just good at improvised weapons and tactical thinking. They were living battlefield computers. Their brains processed combat scenarios with a speed and complexity that would terrify other species. "Watch this," the Admiral said, showing them training footage of Keeper exercises. The video showed General Seung-hwan Park, another Keeper, in a simulation exercise. She was placed in an unfamiliar room with 5 different alien species and told to assess the tactical situation. Within seconds, she had identified weak points on each alien's body, calculated the best sequence for neutralizing multiple opponents, located 17 improvised weapons, planned 3 escape routes, and positioned herself for maximum advantage. All of this happened unconsciously, as naturally as breathing. "Now watch what happens when a conditioned human does the same exercise," the Admiral said, switching to different footage. The conditioned human took several minutes to identify even basic threats. He missed obvious weapons, chose poor positioning, and showed no instinctive understanding of alien anatomy or psychology. The conditioning had turned him from an apex predator into something almost helpless. "The Federation thinks they're safe because they believe humans are now harmless, Admiral," Choi continued. "They don't realize that we kept our most dangerous individuals unconditioned and hidden." But there was more. The Admiral revealed that the Keepers had been studying alien species for 2 centuries, learning their weaknesses, understanding their psychology, and preparing countermeasures. "We know exactly how to defeat every species in the Federation," he said quietly. "We know their biology, their technology, their military tactics. We've been studying them while they thought we were harmless." Dr. Mi-Young Lee, a Keeper psychologist, had joined them for this part of the meeting. She explained the psychological warfare capabilities that humans possessed. "Humans are the only species that naturally understands deception," she said. "Other species can lie about facts, but they can't create complex false personalities or manipulate emotional responses the way humans can." She showed them studies of how human negotiators could subtly influence alien decision-making. Techniques. That used body language, vocal patterns, and psychological pressure that other species couldn't even detect, let alone resist. A trained human diplomat can make an alien delegate believe that their own ideas came from their own mind, Dr. Lee explained. We've been using these techniques for 2 centuries to guide Federation policy in directions that benefit humanity. The scope of the deception was staggering. While the Federation thought they were managing dangerous but diminished humans, they were actually being subtly manipulated by a species that had never given up its predatory nature. "Why are you telling me this?" Hyunwoo asked. Admiral Choi's expression became grave. "Because the conditioning is failing. Younger humans are naturally redeveloping their original instincts. Soon there will be too many unconditioned humans to hide. The Federation will realize what's happening. And then? Then we'll face the same choice our ancestors did," the Admiral replied. "Fight for our right to exist as we are, or submit to even more severe conditioning." He leaned forward, fixing Hyunwoo with an intense stare. "The question is, which side will you choose? Will you help maintain the lie that keeps the peace, or will you help humanity reclaim its true nature?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts announced that multiple Federation facilities were under terrorist attack. The crisis they had all been preparing for was about to begin. The Admiral stood up, his demeanor changing instantly, from diplomat to warrior. "It looks like the choice has been made for us," he said. "Time to see what humanity is really capable of." The terrorist attacks hit 17 Federation stations at once. Nexus Prime was one of the primary targets. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the massive structure as automated systems locked down sections and tried to contain the damage. Hyunwoo followed Admiral Choi through corridors filled with panicking aliens. The attackers had used some kind of jamming technology that disabled most of the station's security systems. Regular Federation forces were overwhelmed and confused. "Who's behind this?" Hyunwoo shouted over the sound of explosions. "Does it matter?" Admiral Choi replied, checking his communicator. "What matters is that the conditioning protocols just became irrelevant." They reached the command center where Captain Boram Young, the station's security chief, was coordinating the defense. She was one of the conditioned humans, following standard Federation emergency procedures. But those procedures weren't working against enemies who had planned for them. "Captain Young," Admiral Choi said, approaching her station, "I'm authorizing Protocol 0. Captain Young looked up from her screens, confusion in her eyes. "Sir, I don't recognize that protocol." "You will," the Admiral said quietly. Then he spoke a series of words that sounded like random Korean phrases. The effect on Captain Young was immediate. Her posture changed, her eyes became sharper, and her entire presence seemed to shift. The conditioning had been broken with trigger, words built into her memory years ago. "Orders, sir?" she asked, her voice now cold and focused. "Protect the station and civilian population. Use all necessary measures." Captain Young turned to her security teams and began issuing commands in a language that Hyunwoo realized wasn't being translated by the universal systems. The other humans on her team responded with the same sharp efficiency, as if they had all suddenly awakened from a long sleep. Throughout Nexus Prime, similar scenes were playing out. Humans who had lived their entire lives as diminished versions of themselves were remembering what they really were. The transformation was frightening to witness. Do-hyun grabbed Hyunwoo's arm. "Look at the alien reactions." On the security monitors, they could see other species throughout the station. The aliens were watching the humans with terror that went beyond simple fear of violence. It was the primal fear of prey animals who suddenly realized they were surrounded by apex predators. "This is what they were afraid of," Sujin whispered. "This is why they wanted us conditioned." Through the station's communication systems, they could hear reports from other Federation facilities under attack. In every location, the same pattern was emerging. Human defenders were activating abilities that had been hidden for 2 centuries, and the results were devastating for the attackers. On Kepler Station, Commander Woo Jin Park had turned the station's shopping district into a maze of improvised traps and weapons. Using nothing but civilian supplies, He had created defensive positions that were stopping armored assault troops. At the Andromeda Trade Hub, Lieutenant Min Seo Kim was coordinating a defense using tactics that Federation military manuals said were impossible. She was commanding alien troops in formations they had never trained for, using psychological warfare that broke enemy morale without firing a shot. How are they doing this? Do-hyun asked, watching the reports in amazement. Dr. Mi-young Lee, who had stayed with them in the command center, provided the explanation. 200 years of suppressed evolution, she said. Every generation of conditioned humans still carried the genetic potential. It was just waiting for the right trigger. But the most shocking transformation was happening to the supposedly ordinary humans throughout the Federation. People who had never received military training were instinctively organizing effective defenses. Shopkeepers and teachers were creating weapons and traps with deadly efficiency. It's not just training, Admiral Choi explained, coordinating defense efforts across multiple systems. It's genetic memory. Every human carries the accumulated survival knowledge of their species. The battle for Nexus Prime was won within 4 hours. The attackers had expected to face conditioned humans following predictable Federation defense protocols. Instead, they faced opponents who fought with creativity and ruthlessness that they couldn't comprehend. Captain Young's final report was brief. All hostile forces neutralized. Station secure. Civilian casualties, 0. But the real battle was just beginning. Throughout Federation space, alien governments were receiving reports of what humans had become when the conditioning failed. The carefully maintained illusion of humanity as a diminished predator species was over. Emergency sessions of the Federation Council were called. Some species demanded that all humans be removed from Federation space. Others suggested more severe conditioning programs. A few, terrified by what they had seen, proposed that humanity be treated as a hostile species. Hyunwoo found himself at the center of the crisis. As Earth's ambassador, he had to address the Federation Council and explain what had happened. But first, he had to make his own choice about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. Admiral Choi had offered him the same conditioning reversal that the other keepers had received. You can be what humans were meant to be, he said, or you can remain as the conditioning made you. Hyunwoo chose to remain unconditioned, not because he wanted to be a weapon, but because he wanted to understand what humanity truly was before deciding its future. When he addressed the Federation Council 3 days later, he spoke as the first officially unconditioned human ambassador in 2 centuries. The chamber was tense, with many delegates refusing to attend in person. For 200 years, Hyunwoo began, humanity chose to become less than what we were in order to join this federation. We suppressed our nature, dulled our instincts, and made ourselves smaller so that you would feel safe around us. He paused, looking around the chamber at the frightened faces of delegates from dozens of worlds. But when your civilization was threatened, when your people were in danger, it was those same instincts that saved you. It was our nature as predators that allowed us to protect the prey. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Humanity will not accept conditioning anymore, Hyunwoo continued. But we make you this promise. We choose to be guardians, not conquerors. We choose to hunt those who would harm the innocent, rather than the innocent themselves. He placed his hands on the podium, the same gesture that had calmed the chamber weeks ago. But now everyone understood what it meant. The weapon screening exemption remains in place because we are the weapons, he said. But we are weapons that have chosen our targets, those who threaten the peace you all cherish. The vote was close, but humanity retained its membership in the Federation. The price was constant monitoring and restrictions on human population in certain systems. But for the first time in 2 centuries, humans could be themselves. The halls of the Federation remained places where humans walked without weapons, not because they couldn't carry them, but because they had chosen to be the weapons that protected rather than destroyed. In the end, that choice made all the difference. Humanity had proven that being a predator didn't mean being a monster. It meant having the strength to choose who deserved protection and who deserved to become prey. The Federation learned to sleep better knowing that somewhere in the darkness, humanity was hunting the things that hunted them. And humans, finally, free to be themselves, chose to make that freedom mean something worthy of the price they had paid to obtain it.